There is an animal in the ocean that calls each other by name, that forms political alliances, that grieves its dead, that has been observed passing a toxic fish through a group carefully, deliberately to get high together. And in certain parts of the ocean, this animal kills, not for food, not for survival, for reasons that decades later scientists still cannot fully explain. You already know what it looks like. You've seen it your whole life. You think you understand it. You don't, because the version of this animal that exists in marine parks and nature documentaries, the playful, harmless, friendly version, that image, was built around about 10% of what this animal actually is. The other 90% is what this video is about. And the deeper researchers have looked, the stranger and the more unsettling this animal becomes. This is the dolphin. Start with the brain, because everything else flows from here. The encephalization quotient, the ratio of brain size to body size, places dolphins second on this planet. Not second among ocean animals, second among every animal that has ever been studied. Above chimpanzees, above gorillas, above elephants, second only to humans. And it's not just the size, it's the architecture. The dolphin brain has a level of cortical folding, the complex ridging on the outer brain surface that determines processing capacity, comparable in some measurements to a human brain. Neuroscientists who study it describe it not as a scaled-up animal brain, but as a genuinely different kind of intelligence that evolved along a completely separate path from ours. Two branches of evolution, millions of years apart, arriving at something that looks structurally surprisingly similar. That alone should make you stop and think. But that's not even the strangest part, because bottlenose dolphins have been documented doing something that outside of humans almost nothing else on Earth does. They use each other's names. Every dolphin develops a signature whistle in the first few months of life, a unique, individual sound pattern it keeps for its entire lifespan, and other dolphins in the group learn those whistles. They remember them, and they use them, producing another dolphin's signature whistle. To get that specific individual's attention, they address each other by name. The only other species confirmed to do this is us. And here is where it starts to become genuinely difficult to look away. Because if you take the brain architecture and the individual identity and the name use and you put them alongside everything else researchers have documented over the last 30 years, you are no longer looking at a smart animal. You are looking at something that demands a different category entirely. In the 1980s, a researcher named Lewis Herman gave a dolphin named Akiakamai an artificial gestural language. Not tricks, not trained responses to specific cues. A structured system with vocabulary and grammar. And what Akiakamai demonstrated wasn't just memorization, it was comprehension of syntax. The understanding that word order changes meaning. Bring me to the ball versus bring the ball to me. Different responses. Correct responses, consistently. A non-human animal demonstrating understanding of grammatical structure. That result has never been fully absorbed into public knowledge. It sits in the scientific literature, cited and confirmed, and most people have never heard of it. But it's not even the most disorienting thing to come out of dolphin cognition research. That would be what happens when you put a dolphin in front of a mirror. Most animals, when they see their own reflection, treat it as another animal. They respond socially. They try to interact with it. The connection between the image and themselves simply doesn't register. Dolphins don't do that. They investigate. They position themselves specifically to examine their own body using the reflection. And researchers studying this behavior documented something that stopped them cold. Dolphins performing repetitive, deliberate movements in front of the mirror, watching the reflection respond, as if they were verifying the connection between the image and themselves. They weren't just recognizing themselves, they were testing the mirror, checking their own hypothesis. The species confirmed to pass the mirror test, great apes, elephants, certain corvids, dolphins, and humans, That's the complete list. And then there's the concept of novelty. In controlled experiments, dolphins have been given a signal meaning do something new, not a trained behavior, not a repetition, something they haven't done before, and they do it. They produce genuinely novel behaviors on command. That requires understanding the abstract concept of newness. The category something I haven't done, applied deliberately. That category of cognition had previously been considered exclusive to great apes and humans. The name use is only the surface of what's happening with dolphin communication. And the deeper researchers go into it, the more unresolved it becomes. Dolphins produce multiple types of sound simultaneously: clicks, burst pulses, and whistles generated through different structures in their nasal anatomy at the same time, which means they may be transmitting information across multiple acoustic channels in parallel. What's being carried across all those channels at once is a question researchers are still working to answer. What they have found is this: when you analyze the statistical structure of dolphin vocalizations, the patterns, the variation, the information density, the numbers look less like animal calls and more like the structural properties of language. That's not a claim that dolphins have language. Researchers are careful about that distinction. But it is a documented structural similarity that wasn't expected, that keeps showing up in the analysis, and that doesn't have a fully satisfying explanation. There are ongoing research projects right now using machine learning to process dolphin communication at a scale no human team could. Say, looking for repeating units, looking for structure, looking for whether what's being produced has the properties of a generative system. The results aren't in, but the fact that the question is being taken seriously by serious researchers with serious tools tells you something about where the evidence has been pointing. One thing that is confirmed: dolphins remember. Individual dolphins recognize each other after separations of 20 years. That was tested using signature whistles. Playing a recording of a former companion's whistle to a dolphin that hadn't encountered that individual in 2 decades. The response was immediate and distinct from the response to unfamiliar whistles. 20 years, remembered. Dolphin hunting is where the intelligence becomes something you can see in real time. In certain coastal regions, dolphins drive fish toward the shoreline in coordinated formations, some pushing from behind, some flanking to prevent escape, others waiting at the edge. Each role distinct, each dolphin executing it in relation to what the others are doing. The fish have nowhere to go. And then in some populations, the dolphins follow them completely out of the water. They beach themselves on the mud to grab fish that have nowhere left to run, then slide back into the water. Controlled, deliberate, repeated. That behavior is not instinct, it's a learned technique that specific populations have developed and passed down to younger generations. Dolphins in other regions don't do it. It belongs to the groups that figured it out. A piece of cultural knowledge that gets taught. Dolphin populations around the world have developed hunting techniques unique to their group. Some use sea sponges held over their rostrum as protective tools while probing rocky seafloor for prey, a behavior passed almost exclusively from mothers to daughters in one specific population in Western Australia. The males mostly don't do it. It's a gendered cultural tradition in a non-human species. Some use echolocation to detect fish buried beneath the seafloor, then excavate them, hunting animals they can't see, hidden underground, using sound as a scanner. And then there's the question of whether echolocation is only being used for detection. The click sounds dolphins produce for echolocation can reach source levels of up to 220 decibels. A jet engine at close range registers around 140. At the intensities dolphins are capable of producing, there is evidence suggesting the clicks may stun prey at close range. Not just locate it, sound potentially as a weapon built into the biology. This is the part of the story that rarely makes it into the standard dolphin narrative. Male bottlenose dolphins form coalitions, tight groups of 2 or 3 individuals, that work together to isolate single females and control their movement. The behavior involves coordinated herding, physical contact, and sustained effort to prevent escape. It can last for days. Researchers who study this call it coercive mate guarding. It is one of the primary reproductive strategies in some bottlenose populations, and the alliance structures behind it are more complex than they first appeared. Coalitions form alliances with other coalitions, a pair allies with a trio to compete against a third alliance of 5. The dolphins are tracking not just their own partnerships, but partnerships between groups. Second-order alliance formation. The only other species with confirmed second-order alliance formation is humans. The social intelligence required to maintain that, to track who is allied with who owes what, who is a threat at which level, is substantial. It's the kind of calculation that researchers had not expected to find operating at this scale in a non-human species. And then there's the violence that has no clear functional explanation. Bottlenose dolphins in multiple locations have been documented killing harbor porpoises, smaller relatives, in coordinated group attacks with no feeding behavior afterward. The kills are not accidental, the coordination is deliberate. The purpose remains genuinely unclear. Some hypotheses involve practiced aggression, territory, or misdirected infanticide behavior. None have been confirmed. What has been confirmed is that it happens. It's widespread across populations, and it doesn't fit neatly into standard models of animal behavior built around survival and reproduction. There is also documented infanticide within dolphin populations, calves killed in some cases by males in ways that researchers believe may force females back into reproductive availability. The behavioral data is complex and not fully resolved, but the pattern exists in the record. These are not comfortable facts. They are also not disputed ones. The social world dolphins navigate is one of the most complex documented in any non-human species. They live in what biologists call fission-fusion societies, groups that constantly split and reform, with membership changing fluidly based on activity, relationship, and circumstance. An individual dolphin is simultaneously managing its own alliances, tracking the alliances between others, remembering past interactions, and adjusting behavior based on a continuously shifting social landscape. Maintaining that kind of dynamic social map requires what researchers describe as something close to a theory of mind. The ability to model what other individuals know, want, and are likely to do. Evidence for this in dolphins is not conclusive, but the behavioral data keeps pushing in that direction. When a calf dies, something happens in dolphin groups that researchers have struggled to categorize cleanly. Mothers carry the body, sometimes for days, keeping it at the surface, not leaving it. There is ongoing scientific debate about whether this reflects a failure to recognize death or something that resembles grief. The behavior is consistent enough and prolonged enough that the second explanation keeps returning to the discussion. They also play. Adult dolphins surf waves with no prey involved. They toss objects. They engage in behavior with no survival function that repeats consistently across individuals and populations. Whether the internal experience behind that behavior is anything like what humans mean by enjoyment is a question that may not be answerable with current scientific tools. But the behavior itself is documented, consistent, and difficult to explain through pure survival mechanics. Dolphins never fully lose consciousness. One hemisphere of the brain sleeps while the other stays active, a system called unihemispheric slow-wave sleep. One eye stays open, movement continues. Partial alertness is maintained at all times. They are the only mammals confirmed to never be completely unconscious in the way humans are. Their skin regenerates at a rate roughly 9 times faster than human skin. Significant wounds, shark bites, deep lacerations, heal at speeds that researchers still don't have a complete biological explanation for. The mechanism behind the recovery rate isn't fully mapped, and there is emerging research suggesting that dolphins may detect bioelectric fields, the faint electrical signals produced by the muscle activity of nearby animals, through sensitive receptors in their rostrum. The evidence isn't conclusive yet, but sharks use this system for hunting. If dolphins have it too, it adds a detection capability on top of echolocation, standard hearing, and vision. An animal that may be scanning its environment through 4 or 5 distinct sensory systems simultaneously. Meanwhile, the machine learning projects analyzing dolphin vocalizations are producing results that researchers describe carefully but consistently. Structural patterns in the communication that don't match what would be expected from non-linguistic animal calls. Whatever is happening in that sound, the tools to understand it are now being built. The answer, whatever it is coming.